is Cheryl Erikson, and I am the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today's video will cover Chapter 5 of Early Learning and Childcare Overview. Please ensure that you are reading Chapter 5, as this video does not replace your chapter readings. So Chapter 5 discusses the pioneering work of theorists who have contributed to our knowledge and understanding of how children learn and grow and develop cognitively, socially, and behaviorally. So a theory is a set of explanations on how children learn and develop. Understanding theories helps us to understand children in that developmental process. So a part of our professional practice, we use the information that we have, and it helps us to guide, to evaluate, to make decisions, and to communicate. We're going to go through many different theories today, and I hope that you gain some knowledge from the theories that we will discuss today. So the theory of constructivism is hands-on, it's an active learning theory. And so really what that means is that when children are learning and growing and developing and interacting within any environment, they are testing limits, they are looking at materials, they're touching materials because they want to learn about things. They want to seek knowledge. And us as educators, we need to guide the children, and we need to learn. We need to teach them. We need to provide them direction within that learning environment. And so when we think of constructing our environment and the theories that the theorists that built on that knowledge, we look to Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky, and John Dewey. Those were the constructive theorists. Piaget's theory on, Piaget developed a cognitive learning theory. And when I say cognitive, I mean brain and thinking. And so that is how we learn. We process things through our brain, and within that, we seek knowledge and we learn. As far as our teaching process and how we teach children and how we guide children, again, we're looking at past knowledge that helps us to build on what we know and to be successful in the future, or provide better experiences for children to be successful in the future. So Piaget and his constructivist learning theory has some different stages within it. He talks about assimilation and he talks about accommodation. And so assimilation is the process of filtering new information into existing knowledge that you already have, or schemes is another term used. And so the example given here is that all red objects are assimilated into existing schemes, which are balls. And so accommodating that knowledge is that you're changing or altering your thoughts on that subject. And so to change it, all red objects are not balls. A red object could be a tomato, or a red object could be an apple. And so that is how you assimilate and accommodate information in Piaget's theory. He has another process of his theory called the equilibrium. And so equilibrium is a balance between schemes in assimilation, and it's the intake of new information into that accommodation. And so children reject data if they can't accommodate or assimilate. And it's almost, they object that data as well, as maybe they aren't ready in that stage of development to be able to process that information and knowledge. So an example of this is a child struggles to make sense of new information but can't assimilate or accommodate it in order to reach that equilibrium. And so Piaget insisted that new learning experiences must have some relationship to previous experiences in order to occur. So we can say that when I had said that they reject that data, and it could be because there isn't any previous information for them to process and learn. So Piaget has, Piaget has several stages of his intellectual development, and so he believed that the developmental stages were the same for everyone. He believed that you could not skip over a stage, that the sequence does not vary, but the ages at which that progression varies. And so, for example, everybody goes through the stage of crawling and walking, but it's not always at 1 year of age you learn to walk. Some children learn at 10 months, some children learn at 13 months of development. And so the first 3 stages of Piaget's intellectual development is social motor, pre-operational, and concrete operational. The sensory motor stage is the stage that infants start with. And so during that stage, from birth to age 2, infants use reflexes like sucking, grasping, gross body activities, and senses to build on schemes and knowledge. And so they gain knowledge through their body. Their brain begins to develop object permanence. And so object permanence is the stage of development where when you're playing with that infant and you take the toy and you put it behind their back, at 4 months of age and 5 months of age, you take that object and you put it behind your back, and to them it's gone, it's disappeared, it doesn't exist anymore. Pre-op, the stage of object permanence is when they realize that it still exists and they go and they look for it. They will think with senses and reflective actions, and they're very egocentric. They're very me-centered. It's all about me. They see themselves as the center of the world. During that pre-operational period, children begin to use symbols to represent objects. Their language tends to accelerate. They're using more words. This is age 2 to 7. They've started full sentences. By 7, your repertoire of words is huge. Egocentrism thinks, and everyone thinks and acts as he or she does. So again, it's me, that me stage, still at that age 2. By 7, it's not. The children are moved past that stage of development. They use self-talk, that me, or their name to communicate as well. Piaget's stage of concrete operational development, so between the ages of 7 and 12, you see further growth again. So, mastering those conversations, those one-on-one correspondence, they begin to use mental images and symbols. They begin to think logically. By age 7 and 12, they have a great understanding of rules and regulations and social dynamics and things like that. Behavioral theories. Behavioral learning theories explain how children learn cognitively, socially, and behaviorally, how they play, how their natural biology or how they mature affects that learning. And so behavioral often in dealing with situations, there's rewards for behaviors or punishments for behaviors. And so rewards and punishments are a tool used to change the behavior. And so One of the theories that was developed for this behavioral theory was Pavlov. He developed conditioned, trained, he did experiments on dogs. And so basically he would provide food to the dog, and the dog would have a lot of saliva. That would be the response to the food. They knew food was coming. And so when he provided the food and they had that response with the saliva, he would ring a bell. And so in the end, he could just merely ring that bell and the dogs would salivate. That is conditioning, an example of conditioning. J.B. Watson was another behavioralist, and his theory believed that environmental factors rather than genetic makeup or internal influences determined how people behaved. Bandura was another theorist or pioneer of theories, and he believed in a social learning theory. So he believed that children learn through observation. They would see others do things or see things being modeled, and then they would in turn imitate that behavior, and that was how they learned. He believed that children were not passive in their development, and that learning occurred through certain processes. So the processes being modeling, observation, experiences, and through self-regulation. Erikson's psychosocial development. Erikson was a huge pioneer of theories. And so Erikson developed a whole psychosocial development theory with many different stages. The first stage being trust versus mistrust, which was birth to 18 months. Autonomy versus shame and doubt, which was 18 months to 3 years. Initiative versus guilt, which was 3 to 5 years, and industry versus inferiority, which was 5 to 8 years. Erikson's first stage of his theory of basic trust versus mistrust occurred during infancy. If an infant's basic needs are met, so an infant, if they're hungry and they're fed and they're crying and they're picked up and cuddled and rocked and nurtured, and meeting those basic needs helps an infant develop trust. And so they feel safe, they feel looked after, their needs are being met. That's how they develop trust. If they're in an environment that they go hungry or they're left to cry, they don't develop that trust. And within that, if you're not developing trust, it affects, it can affect your relationships and how you learn and grow and develop it, and how you learn and grow and develop. The second stage, autonomy versus shame and doubt, occurs between the ages of 18 months to 3 years of age. And this is, around age 2, a typical toddler will start using the word no. And a typical toddler will be exploring their environment and maybe getting into a little bit of mischief. And so they depending on our reaction to those behaviors, they can feel that sense of shame, or if it's negative, a negative experience, they could doubt themselves. And again, that kind of sets the children up to, we want to promote positive guidance, right? So that children are feeling good about themselves and not feeling shame. But it is also a natural process in development. Initiative versus guilt, age 3 to 5 years of age. So that's, the child is becoming independent and, has a lot more self-help skills. The stage of when they're starting to develop that sense of what's right and wrong, and maybe make a decision that they want to do something, but they know that mom and dad isn't going to like that, and they don't want to get in trouble. That's kind of the stages they go. They have those feelings of I want to do it, but I'm feeling guilty because I know it's wrong. And then industry versus inferiority is the fourth stage, 5 to 8 years of age, and children are active and busy and learning to be competent, and want to do things well, want to be successful, but are learning that processes that you don't, you can't always win. Sometimes things don't go the way you want them to go, and they feel that inferiority type of feelings. Maslow developed a theory of self-actualization, and so with Maslow's theory, you needed to go through, to reach the top, you had certain steps or certain needs that had to be met before you could reach that self-actualization. And so with Maslow, everybody has basic needs that they need to be met, like food and shelter and clothing. And when we take this theory and we think about children in the education system right now, if you're a child that doesn't have food and a place to live, your focus is going to be more on where your next meal is coming from or where you are going to sleep tonight. You're not going to be taking in the environment that you're in right now to learn. And so you're not going to learn until those basic needs are met. So you have to have those needs met in order to feel that self-fulfillment. And so that was how Maslow's stages of his theory worked. Uri Brenner had a ecological theory or bioecological theory where children develop through the context of several systems. And so basically the relationships you formed in the environment shaped how you learned and grew and impact you throughout, those processes impact you throughout your life. And so there were multi-systems within his theory, the first being the microsystem. And so the microsystem is your parents, your family, your grandparents, your child care center, could be your neighborhood, it could be your church, the community club, the park within your neighborhood, and so forth. And so your interactions within your community and those relationships have some impact and influence on how you learn and grow and develop. Your mesosystem is more of an environmental system. Brenner's ecological theories, ecosystem, involves events within your life. So if for some reason you on a regular basis went to work with mom or dad, and this is just an example, and dad lost his job, that event of losing a job would impact you. It could impact you in the sense that maybe you ate differently, maybe you didn't have as many groceries, maybe you had to move because you were not a two-income family anymore. So things like that within that ecosystem impacts your life at that time. The macro system is culture, customs, and values of society. Rules, police, all impact you within that system and how you view the world around you. The final system, the chronos system, is environmental influences, over time. And so changing of community dynamics, could be environmental health issues, and how those impact you and affect you. And it's about how you learn and grow and develop, right? So you take pieces of information from each of those systems that impact you, and it shapes the way you learn. It affects the way you learn and how you perceive things as well. So that concludes Chapter 5 and the theories of development. We will be going forward and exploring a few more theories and getting a little bit more in depth in some of the later chapters. Please ensure that if you have any questions regarding Chapter 5 that you do see your instructor to clarify anything, as well as check in for any missing handouts for Chapter 5 and assignments pertaining to Chapter 5.